guys, welcome back to the Human Condition. I have a pretty interesting one I thought I wanted to share with you guys. At least I thought it was pretty interesting. I wanted to share with you guys, and this is another video in our philosophy series, and it is what are the origins of philosophy. So in this video, I want to deep dive into history and discover where philosophy began. And I know a lot of people say ancient Greece, or not ancient, yeah, ancient Greece in Athens. However, I believe I was like, there had to be people that thought outside the box and questioned reality before Athens. Even though I know Athens obviously is a very prominent place where I guess it officially really ramped up philosophy. I feel like there had to be some people that thought outside the box, and questioned the status quo before Athens. So this is where I got the idea for this video. So in this video, I'll be talking about some aspects of like politics throughout history, religion, and philosophy's development throughout history. So it's a lot to cover, but basically the point of this video is to express how philosophy had made a big impact on all types of subjects such as science, math, and how philosophy really helped. Even though all subjects are important, philosophy is very underrated because it helped form other subjects like science, math, helped even with politics, and some religions have philosophical aspects to it, and we'll talk about that in this video. So yeah, and not undermining religions because I'm a religious person myself, but just talking about how the thinking outside the box helped develop all aspects of different things. So yeah, what are the origins of philosophy? So when I was researching it, I found out that you have to date back all the way back to the ancient Sumerian city-states. And basically these city-states, I guess, developed probably one of the first polytheistic religions of, it doesn't have a name because it's been so long ago, but basically they believed people, the deities in the sky looked like people, and they had like families, which I was like, oh, I didn't know the polytheistic religion was so in depth, because I just assumed it was like fire, and water. But then I was like, oh, that's really cool that it was very in depth and very interesting. So I thought that was cool, kind of interesting, pretty lit, pretty interesting that they thought it looked like people, and had like family dynamics, which kind of makes sense, I guess, because back then you didn't have like science to go off of, and different ideas now that we have today. So the ancient Sumerian city-states could be considered the first philosophers in a way, because they came up with the first, or discovered the first polytheistic religion. And yeah, so they could also be considered the first philosophers because they came up with the first polytheistic religion, I guess, in a way, sort of. So that's ancient Sumerian city-state people. Can't be traced back to one person, though. And then for political philosophy, each Sumerian city-state had one monarchy. It was a monarchy, an autocracy, and a theocracy, meaning it was one strong ruler. Autocracy, monarchy, because they were kings, and theocracy because they believed the civilians of each city-state believed the king was a divine, supposed to be there for the divine reasons. They also, for divine reasons, kings were there. They also were the first form of, when I looked up, when I was trying to research this, I could be wrong, might be wrong, but they said they were the first form of republicanism, as in because they were they tried to work with the people, it said, back in the Sumerian city-states, and that was the first embodiment of shared powers between monarchy and people, or at least sort of, in a way, because they worked with the people. And then eventually one city-state got too strong, Akkadian, and took over all the city-states, and this became the Akkadian, or not all of them, but most of them, the Akkadian Empire, the first political philosophy of an empire or imperialism. So this is the first empire. This one wasn't really as didn't work with people quite as much. It was more centralized, monarchy, autocracy, had similar beliefs to an extent, but was enforced the Akkadid city states beliefs. Then eventually, moving forward, the empire fell. Throughout this timeline, also you see most empires' political philosophies or political institutions fall from. They end up becoming monarchies or monarchies, and then they end up developing the empires, and then these empires collapse from internal strife or invasions by other empires. So the Achaemenid Empire collapsed, forming the Babylonian Empire and the Assyrian Empire. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I think Babylonia took over Assyria and had for a long time, the same philosophy, political philosophy, made intact. For example, then Persia took over Babylonia, and Macedonia took over Persia, the Macedonian Empire. Now when we get to the interesting part of switching the politics, eventually we get to the Greek city-states, where the philosophy began. Really started to become prominent. This is where you got Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, all the very prominent philosophers that really started to push philosophy. We can be considered one of the most first philosophers, I guess, because in Greece, because they really pushed it, even though before they kind of were philosophers in a way. Thales was the first philosopher of Greece, I think. But the first oligarchy, in my opinion, if I was researching this, a political oligarchy, meaning the group of people ruled, was actually in Athens, because Athens were originally, and most of the Greek city-states were originally, except Sparta, were monarchies, and Athens slowly developed from a monarchy to an oligarchy of group of people ruling Athens for a little bit of time. And then after this, Sparta formed its own and started as an oligarchy. So the first oligarchy, in my opinion, it might not be 100% accurate on this, was actually Athens originally. Then there was people didn't like that, and then it became a full democracy, and that's where free thought and free forming thought came to be. So then, that's where you had more of the philosophers like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, all those awesome lit people were during that time of democracy. Then Macedonia forced an oligarchic rule over Athens again, and that's kind of how that dynamic worked. Not one of the first republics, but the Roman Republic took over Macedonian Empire. And then this is when you see the first political philosophy, I guess sort of political establishment of the Roman Republic turn to the Roman Empire and that dynamic. One theme that happens throughout it when I was looking it up was monarchies either turn into empires or they turn into oligarchies. And then those oligarchies fall and turn into democracies or republics, but those republics end up turning to empires, and it kind of repeats over and over and over again. And finally, eventually, and we got it figured out later on in philosophies, political philosophy, but back then, political philosophy was still developing, I guess. I know I started talking about religions, basically. So, first monotheistic religion was Judaism. Then another one called Zoroastrianism, which is something I never knew about. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't know there was another one, monotheistic religion, that was kind of close towards the time of Judaism. And that one was similar. It just believed that for people to get into like a good place, they had to do good things. If they did bad things, they wouldn't get into a good place. And there was this similar however, a little different. They believed in a supreme being, Zoroastrianism. However, they believed in life you had to do you in their idea of heaven, you had to do good things to get to heaven. If you did bad things, you wouldn't get there. Whereas Judaism, obviously, they believed you follow God and you get to heaven as Judaism. So that was the key difference between the two first monotheistic religions. Then, one ancient one, Hinduism, that actually came before Judaism in India, was formed off of an ancient one called Vedic religion. And Vedic religion, if I'm not mistaken, they believed in kind of like a hierarchical system, and that in karma, they believe in the soul and stuff like that, and like the soul. And then Buddhism kind of turned against the Vedic religion, and then it kind of influenced the Vedic religion to adapt into Hinduism, but was still very different from Buddhism and Jainism. And Buddhism and Jainism, Buddhism, I think if I got this correct, believed in more of a conscious that lived on after each life rebirth cycle, and Jainism believed in a soul that transferred each life cycle. And Buddhism was the consciousness and believed in nirvana, like, nirvana, the ultimate place that someone can be if they try to reach a state of enlightenment and knowledge. Whereas Jainism was more about actions, like day-to-day actions, like that one could do to take off the karma, which they believed was more like a thing that attached to people. Whereas Buddhism believed karma was more due from actions, I think, if I understood the researching that right. So yeah, that was the difference between Buddhism and Jainism and Hinduism. Hinduism, the only difference was it was more hierarchical status, and believed people had a status based off how they were born. But Buddhism and Jainism didn't like that. They thought it shouldn't matter how the status is. So those are the three ancient religions that came around from around India. Also, in this video, I know I'm talking about religions and political structures, philosophies. However, I'm not roasting any religions. I'm just researching about them, and not trying to undermine religion, because I'm a religious person. So yeah. I wouldn't want to do that'd be counterintuitive, I guess. A lot later down the line, you had two more religions, which was Christianity and Islam. Christianity, Jesus came to earth and saved people from their sins, and then from Islam, it was developed in the Arabian Peninsula, if I remember correctly when researching this, and it was by Muhammad, and he developed a Islamic State. Also, my personal belief is Christianity. However, I still respect and love all people. Basically, the two most recent religions I think that developed was Christianity and Islam from those ancient religions that were before. There were a ton of religions before. The main point of this is how philosophy and religion had philosophical aspects to it, of thinking and questioning existence. And that's why I gave the total timeline of different religions. But yeah, so that's the religion part. Political part goes all the way up to now,